Welcome back. It is Tuesday, and we are so fortunate and grateful to have Mike DeCourcy with us from the Sporting News. Make sure you give him a follow and follow his content at the Sporting News. In addition to that, the Big Ten and Indiana getting a few more players potentially into the league. Obviously, Jalen Hood-Schifino from Indiana, Trayce Jackson-Davis, whom Zach Osterman really thinks that his selection was to be on the roster and not just as an opportunity, even though he was chosen pretty far down. Normally, that's not a guy that you're going to think that, well, he's got a spot. But according to Zach, he thinks that he does. And we also have Trayce Thompson playing for the Knicks in the summer league as well. If now those three, I don't expect all three of them to make it. Two of them, that would give Indiana 8 players in the league, which would be the most by any Big Ten school. And this is still through a period where Indiana was not looked at as, their most successful time in their program, but yet they were still able to produce guys and get guys in the league at that. So that's an elite level player that they've still been able to get, just not have the success to go with it.
Yeah, I mean, I think that you look at it. I mean, they had great success with Victor Oladipo. Thomas Bryant has been able to get in the league and do well. Cody Zeller still up there. So there have been some very good players at Indiana through that period. OG as another. I mean, Victor and OG were both not super highly recruited players who became significant players at IU. And then there are players like Jalen and Trayce who were highly regarded. Trayce was top 15. Jalen was in that same neighborhood, and they both had highly successful periods at IU and now a shot at doing well in the NBA. Certainly Jalen will be very coveted as a first-round pick. And I was surprised as many people passed on Trayce as did, but I still believe that I'm not surprised that he's expected to be a roster player, and I won't be surprised if he succeeds at getting out on the floor and making a difference. I don't expect him to be a star. I'm not sure he'll ever be a starter, but I do think that he can be a rotation player on a good team and make a difference in winning. He's not going to go out and score 20 a game, but I think he can be a guy who people want to have on their team because he impacts winning.
Absolutely. And there's the addition that what bodes well for him is the addition of, is it 2 more two-way players?
Yes.
The NBA has added. So now you've opened up 30 additional jobs, and whether it's 1 per team, I think they get 1 additional two-way, but it's 30 additional jobs. So that helps also for his efforts.
It does. But I'm not sure that that's, although I'm not sure that he's signed yet. If they want him to be a roster player, you can't give him a two-way because you're only allowed to keep a two-way guy up for half the games or 50 games or something like that.
Yeah, it's not many.
There's a limit on the number of games he can be up for. So if you intend for him to be a roster player, you need to sign him to a straight-up deal. So I from what I read, that they were optimistic that he could make their rotation. That he could make their regular roster. The quote from Mike Dunleavy Jr. was that they didn't feel like they had great depth in the front court and that he could contribute there. I'm optimistic for him. I really like Trayce, and I hope it works out well for him.
Well, it's people were really upset at the Pacers when they passed on him not once, not twice. And then Trayce sends out that tweet, which just shake my head at that. I'm like, come on, man, you're about to become a pro and you're doing that. I thought that ended last year with the letter thing, but no. But anyway, he landed up in the better spot. I mean, if he'd have gone to the Pacers, it would not have been the same situation. It would not have been conducive to his game, and where he landed is, and they won him. They wanted him.
I think the Pacers have Isaiah Jackson, who is basically what Trayce would be in the NBA in an ideal circumstance. Because Isaiah's not a great shooter either, but he can move and he can guard. And
and he can pass.
and that's where Trayce will start. I mean, that's where his value will begin. He can move and he can defend. And so that's how he gets on the floor first. And then hopefully he adds some opportunity to make some baskets and that sort of thing. But move, keep your feet moving, stay where where they want you on defense, block some shots when you get the opportunity without necessarily taking yourself out of place. All of that is what makes Isaiah Jackson a roster player for the Pacers. And I don't think that they needed another one. So Golden State does. So it'll be a much better situation for him.
Jalen Hood-Schifino ended up with the Lakers. I'm like, well, that's pretty sweet. You're going to Showtime, LeBron James. There's just a lot of great things going on there. Magic Johnson, you're going to be he's going to be putting his arm around you. Probably you're going to walk down the halls and look up at Jerry West and all these great things about this league. He didn't go to the some piddlywink team. This is a bedrock team, man. That's not only is it a bedrock team. It's in Los Angeles. He ended up seemingly in a great spot because I think he is more than mentally capable of handling that.
Yeah, I'll be interested to see how he fits with what they have and what they do and what they need. That'll be a curiosity for me because his greatest strength as a player is somewhat LeBron's greatest strength. I mean, he's not LeBron, but LeBron's ability to attack and make plays on the move is what makes him extraordinary. With LeBron, he is not only great at attacking off, from the perimeter to the lane. He's also great at getting to the rim. He's also great, he's great at making passes, but there's a similarity there. So I'm not sure how he plays off of LeBron in that situation. I've never felt that the teams that draft around LeBron do a good enough job of getting him shooters. And I don't know that Jalen necessarily changes that. Maybe what Jalen can do is lessen the burden of LeBron James to initiate offense. That's a lot of work. It's hard to be a point guard, to bring the ball up, to make all those decisions, to make to have the attention constantly focused on you. That's a hard position to play. So LeBron is now getting close to 40. And so maybe Jalen's ideal scenario is to come in and be somebody that makes it so that LeBron takes that spot when it's absolutely necessary. Big possession, end of game, big matchup, whatever it might be. And then he takes the burden the rest of the time.
Then you have Trayce Thompson, who's just probably an outside shot at best, but he has a shot. When Juwan Morgan got his chance, he was kind of in this same boat, but yet he was able to find a way to not only get on a team, but if I remember correctly, he becomes the first undrafted free agent to start a playoff game.
Yeah, he did well. I think they're different players. I think Trayce's path to the NBA will be challenging, but if he goes to Vegas and plays great, he's going to make a lot of money somewhere. And I think that's the goal.
Everybody they talk about Trayce not shooting. Well, that's one thing that they talk the opposite way about Trayce. It's like, stop shooting. Sometimes people would want him to stop shooting the three, but he has that in his arsenal. And that's the one thing that I said he does have going for him. He has a nice, versatile tool bag. He can play and pound down low if he has to, and he's big enough to do that. He can step outside and shoot and handle the ball a little bit, and a good defender, but not on the three. He seemed to always never be where he needed to be on the three. And I'm like, but I always said I think he gave up more threes in history value than any other player. But that's because he was not used to stepping out, I guess, on that row. But he'll be interesting to see what he can get done.
Yeah, I think this is an important venue for him. He needs to play well in Vegas, and again, because that's where all the European teams are going to be scouting that tournament, that event, whatever you want to call it. They'll be there, and that a lot of the opportunities that develop are either affirmed in Vegas or created in Vegas, depending on how the scouts from the various European teams have viewed you as a collegian. They scout you as a collegian. They want to know what you've done, but then they like to see it on the floor in Vegas because, again, it's a different game. 24 seconds is a different game than the 30-second game is. It's faster. You can take more of those shots in the NBA game because there are more shots and because the game moves faster. And sometimes it's like the musical chairs. The ball moves around and it winds up in your hands at the end, and you got to take the shot. You got to be comfortable with that. And that's international basketball as well. So this will be an important circumstance for him, whether he makes an NBA team or not.
And talk about all three of these players for Indiana when they're in the summer league here shortly, or getting to play, and people are seeing three different Indiana players. That bodes well for future recruiting. I talked about Indiana's recruiting changing earlier, and this is a big step. It's a gigantic commercial.
Oh, no question. I think draft night was, to an extent, when Jalen Hood-Schifino goes in the first round. That's enormous for Indiana. Because Indiana gets a chance to be on television. A five-star prospect who's out there now knows that if he goes to IU, he can do the one-and-done thing. If he goes to IU and commits to winning and commits to the program and has a successful season, that he can be someone who is selected in the first round, is flirts with the lottery level of the draft. Is coveted by them. And then as well, you have someone like Trayce, who, although he slipped down further than you'd like, there was still that attention as the draft went on. Hey, this is a great player out there that had a great career. Why aren't people taking him? Well, even that is somewhat beneficial to IU because he's being talked about. And then, I know you said that you didn't like the tweet or whatever. I think it's good. I just don't think I don't think those things. It's good to have confidence, and if you get dumped on in the draft and you say you're going to be sorry, I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. They may end up not being sorry, but you have to believe that they are going to be sorry. I mean, when someone doesn't hire you in the hiring process for a job that you apply for or whatever, that you think you're the best candidate, I can tell you from experience that you always feel that little bit of, I want to show them that they were wrong. I'll give you an example. When in 1992, the Pittsburgh Press was closing. The Pittsburgh Press needed to hire some of the press's staff because the Post-Gazette was a smaller paper, didn't publish Sundays, only published 6 days a week. The Press published 7. And so they needed a staff that could accommodate the addition of a Sunday edition, which is bigger by nature, et cetera. And they didn't hire me. And it's been 31 years now. And don't think that everything I've done hasn't been it's been a little bit less now. But as I was going toward where I landed in my career, there was always a little bit of showing the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette that they could, look what you could have had. You didn't hire me. Too bad. There was always a little bit of that behind it. So I totally get, mine wasn't televised like his was, but I totally get where he's coming from. And I totally understand why he felt compelled to do that. In 1993, I didn't have the option of tweeting that I was frustrated by that decision and having to move to Memphis and all that. And I probably wouldn't have because I may have wanted to go back, but it's 2023 now, and I'm not so worried about whether I can ever one day work at the Pittsburgh Post because I can tell a story, and that's why you get to that. You feel like you were like they made a mistake, and I totally understand why Trayce is in that spot, and I give him props for being confident enough to tell the teams in the league that you could have had me.